playing with the idea of a moon and snowballed
О,
from
да,
there. We
геймплей.
knew in season 10 Seer was coming, and there was this whole story about his prophecy, and it just started, all these started coming together. We always imagined, like, what is it that, you know, we knew that the moon got hit and it affected Boreas, but what would the aftermath be? How did they live with that? So the moon here represents all the work that's been going on since Seer was born. So it's about 26 years in the making. You know, a lunar expedition was sent to the moon to survey all the damage. They knew there was a lot of work to be done, but before they could bring people to the moon to fix things, they needed to make it habitable. So they brought science departments up here to create a terraformer and atmosphere station. So you can see the pink sky, like an artificial atmosphere that was created. And this colony was formed called the Colony of Hope. And it's on the moon Cleo. Workers were able to start coming here, and we've got the promenade, which you can see across from the terraformer, this big giant wall. Those are apartments,
Вы говорите, у меня стрим хреново идет. Вы посмотрите на эти квадраты. Да, это Мартиросян. Врился.
Now, along the way, we've got things like, you know, private industry have come here as well.
Был весь патчноут. На ютубе что выложил, да?
Kind of all segued into what's happening now, which is the Apex games have arrived. Someone struck a deal with Eduardo Silva in exchange for funding to help save their planet. They allowed the game to come on the moon and become the next arena.
We can just talk about this POI really quick. So this is the terraformer. This is what Ed was talking about with how they were starting to terraform the moon. So this is the actual POI that is doing the terraforming. You can see there's like stuff coming out of the top. It's generating an atmosphere. It's spinning around, trying to create a habitable atmosphere.
Типа эта штука дает жизнь на Луне. Атмосфера, все дела, живность. Короче, если подумать логически, то это локация, которую никогда не будут менять. Пропи карту? Ну, не совсем.
This is like the sweet spot. You can actually get up here, but it's kind of hard to stay up here for too long. You can get like right on the edge. We don't want you going too high up.
И ломается,
get on the
да?
edge so you can get a good view.
Это такие мелочи показывают на самом деле.
That big wall, that big blue and white wall in the distance, that's the
игроки гораздо больше найдут.
We can go over there later. But then you can start looking around and you can see other landmarks over the rocks and over in the horizon. Like to the south, there's one of the Atmos stations. You have another Atmos station northeast, and then there's a few other POIs. The terraformer has these like, there's these arms that link up to different directions, sort of like different cardinal directions you can head through the map. And these are really good points to defend when people are trying to come up. So we find that the terraformer is this like kind of king of the hill sort of situation, but you can't really defend it all from one spot. You kind of have to spread out a little bit. You can slide down these arms. It's really fun. You can slide down the interior of the arms as well. And then there's just like, yeah, these interior spots with the legs. You can see, like, to Ed's point, we were trying to sell the story artwork as well. So
Не крути так камерой.
There's a lot of posters and little visual storytelling pieces across the map.
Это у них на Твиче битрейт такой убогий.
This is just another way back up to the top. There's a vertical zip line here. Yeah. And then all three arms.
2500 битрейт.
And then you can, the other thing that's kind of unique about this POI is there's an
Боже, какой позор.
That just sort of like wings you around the perimeter of it. So you can use that to kind of rotate around a little quicker and get from one leg to the other.
Fun fact, the terraformer is named Bertha because it's
Бухой, как ты играть будешь?
Was the name of the project. One of our artists desperately wants to call this the flush because of the swirling water.
Графон.
But yeah.
Ребят, на самом деле, качество 4К. И когда вы будете играть, у вас точно такой же графон будет. Ну, карту показывает.
Actually, we could probably just go through one of these. These are our lunar. Well, Ed, do you want to talk about these?
Yeah, so this represents the CRC and the NAB. So we got the Cleo Recovery Council and the National Alliance of Boreas. They were the ones that kind of co-funded this mission to the moon. And these were the first kind of
ну, извините, на ютубе у них стрима нет, только Twitch.
to survey the damage. They set up these camps You'll see some astronaut suits here back when they were having to explore the moon before the atmosphere was created. So yeah, throughout you'll see a few of these camps, and they're really fun little areas to explore.
Yeah, so those are all, they're kind of like these
Давай зависай штуку эту.
these pieces that we put together to make a bunch of different variations of those buildings. So it's like a style that you need to get used to and learn. But they're all over the map.
Непонятно, можно ли в обратную сторону.
Some of them play really similarly because they're the same configurations, but other ones are in different configurations. So we're coming up to the promenade.
Ну да, чисто карту показывают.
A really popular POI because it is sort of this this really centralized choke point, and a lot of traffic flows through here. So there's a few ways up into the promenade. There's ramps on the sides, but you can also take these zip lines.
And this is where the people of Clio would find their basic supplies, like their general stores, their pharmacies. It's basically how they can survive up here. This is where they get
не так уж и далеко ехать, кстати.
their everyday goods as they live
Баллонов я до сих пор не вижу. Видимо, моя теория подтверждается, что на этой карте баллонов для полетов не будет. Валькирия должна быть must-have. Микрофон оттуда же. Ну, когда у нас конференция была... Когда у нас конференция была закрытая, с прошлой карты, там точно такие же микрофоны были. Но качество видео было гораздо лучше.
Yeah, so we find ourselves a lot of the times in playtesting, the big question arises, do we go through the promenade or do we go around it? Because going through the promenade, if there's a team in there, it's like it's a pretty good choice you have to make. Like, can you squeeze through, or are you gonna actually have to fight someone? There's kind of a sneaking route as well under the promenade. Over here, there's two pathways you can take to.
В общем, данная локация самая мясная на карте, возможно, будет, по его словам. Именно то место, где может проходить много народу, ротироваться. А что с зипкой у робота? Вы видели кушку, ну, ульту эту? Будто там отображается дальность.
They're quite swanky. I guess they got to make it worthwhile for them to come all the way to the moon to give up their lives on Boreas.
Дрейв юзает, поэтому они его и не удаляют.
Established from Sears' lore trailer has a very dominant African culture, so we kind of brought in a few influences to make it, you know, feel like there's some of that here as well.
Да, топстрейфит.
But yeah, it's got all the amenities needed to survive on the moon.
Эксуар, это ж
from a gameplay standpoint, these buildings, I think there's two different ones. There's like a smaller one and a bigger one. But these buildings
точнее, команда.
And these are like destination points we use a lot for the zip rails. So you'll see over here, I'll show you something that's kind of cool about these. Yeah, so this is the other variation. It's a little larger. These are really, really fun to defend because they have these like posts here, these kind of post up points on the edges here where you can kind of just watch down the line, watch down the zip rail line to make sure another team isn't trying to run up on you. One of the fun things about this is actually...
Что-то мне кажется, что какие-то карты реально удалят потом. Они делают мапы, уже сколько, 5 штук, и просто среди 5 мапа ставят самые подходящие для Battle Royale этого.
That's another major POI. These bridges also very, very popular positions for fighting. They create like a good hold for your team.
So the core is basically the energy source for the moon.
Да, видите, ульта.
Scientific endeavors. We see little yellow
Не особо понимаю, правда, что там. Вроде бы дистанция. Максимально, на которую может поставить.
Was there anything that kind of inspired you guys with the style of art here or the visual style that you wanted to go with for this map?
Ну, YouTube Gaming, здорово.
I've mentioned this in a few interviews. So one of the strongest themes was heaven and hell, right? We've done other themes like fire and ice and tropical kind of.
Мне кажется, комьюнити само обычно решает, где будут мясные локации. Не совсем. Комьюнити отталкивается от особенностей карты.
So heaven and hell was kind of the motif that was pushing on the team, and especially the
Комьюнити не решает. Банально вспомните, насколько высокий тимплей среди рандомов. Так что... Особенности карты.
We knew that we couldn't have too much of that because you want people to, you know, relate to the areas that they're going to be playing in for a long period of time.
Мне нравится, когда много карт. Ну, когда хороших много.
Of a gray ambiance. So we do have some of that moon vibe, but then we contrasted that with more of an earthly terraformed half of the moon.
In the middle here, the hot spot, as they call it, so like the
Хорошо, что штормпоинт убрали. Так, ну да. Тут так пролетаешь все-таки.
If you look up, you can see there's actually a hole, so you can skydive into the top here.
Ну, отлично, Валькирии можно вылететь.
You can skydive right through that hole. It's also kind of we internally we call it like a blender. So if you do land on the edge, those arms will kind of kick you down as well.
Ну, только урон не получаешь.
You can use that for like a speed drop if you want.
А слайдом можно вылететь?
It's kind of like it's a tricky spot to defend from the middle because
Такое чувство, что слайдом не долетаешь.
Every direction and these things are rotating. You don't really know where people can come from. So we find like people.
О, почаще ульту ставить будет и крюк взять. Подкрутил лут себе. Да, это все-таки расстояние для ульты, скорее всего. Самое очевидное. To escape, to enter, you know, you can use it to just kind of like rotate
escape?
Around the POI,
but it does put you at a disadvantage.
Плохие советы, ладно, говори.
So similar mechanics.
Пускай нубики так делают. Лишние фраги на фарме.
But this one doesn't damage you, and so you'll see that this mechanic across the map in a few spots. This blue glow. Anytime you see a spot like that, that'll actually lift you in the air. So we put those in spots where
он на землю упал, его все равно подкидывало.
Like you just jump in there and die, but we decided we
didn't
really want that, so we put this sort of like safety net in. So it's sort of a way that you're just not going to immediately die.
This map seems quite large.
So it's roughly the size of World's Edge. It's a little bit bigger than World's Edge, but you will find that once you have like a full game of 60 and people are just ripping around on the zip rails, that it actually feels kind of tight and a little quick.
Дарян чуть-чуть прослушал. Вроде он сказал, что побольше World's Edge.
You're kind of out of the action and you're in sort of like a downbeat and you're looking for action. This is one of the levers you can use to kind of close distances and stuff like that. So this is a launch pad. It'll take you up to a zip rail so you can grab it. There's a couple of those. You can see on your mini map, it looks sort of like a buckle or like a rectangle with a dot. Those are all the pads that take you on the rails. And the rails are identified by the red line.
The red lines? I was going to say, there's no balloons.
Ну, кайф, спасибо, что показал, когда я вырезал прям карту. Я вот идеально тайминги нахожу. Ни хрена интересного не было все время. Только альтабнулся, показал на батуте, как прыгает.
We'll head this way to stasis.
Well, everyone's at alpha base. Should we just look at alpha base?
Oh, yeah, I guess we should. Yeah, so you can take that zip rail into alpha base there below.
So this is basically the first location where.
Нормальное название, карта, новой карты.
Giant crater. This is where they set up their first camp. It's the largest lunar camp, and it's just this network of these lunar habitat.
Yeah, so it's kind of like.
Место бури не нравится, мне тоже.
There's a good like figure-8 loop going through it, and this is sort of what we call like a town POI. So it's a bit smaller. It doesn't support too many squads.
Ну, а максималку поставил.
It's just a good place to rumble, to be honest. You have these good like loot circuits that you can do through these buildings and just kind of rip through them in a loop.
А нихера себе у тебя здесь пока.
You can get on top of these as well, obviously, and these are good.
А почему вот с легендами специально не выкладывали, да? Потому что изменения Pathfinder есть, как бы. А почему у тебя ни слова про персонажей?
making sure that if it looks like somewhere you can go, that you can go there. Yeah, so this is one of the longer
Именно
lines
каждая
in
карта.
the game for the zip rails. And it connects all the way from Alpha Base.
Все, это я понял.
How fast do these things go compared to zip lines?
Well, you tell me. How do they feel faster?
Much faster, they seem.
It's hard to get my head around.
It feels like they accelerate.
They do.
Yeah,
They
so
have-
they take your
Они сидят в этом
their
войсе еще.
momentum into
Как у нас
account. So, like,
конференция была.
if it's going up or down, if you're climbing up, it'll slow down, and if you're going downhill, it'll speed up. But it eventually maxes out.
Here we're approaching the stasis net in what we call the failed forest. So the idea is that the terraformer, you'll see like a radius of what's been terraformed from that central building, and parts of the map didn't really take, and this is one of those areas that didn't quite take. So it's a bit of a creepier forest, and the stasis net is one of the first things they set up here to contain all the rock debris that you can see in the skybox.
Сезон сколько длится?
To prevent
3
it from
месяца.
crashing into Boreas as well as crashing back onto the moon. So that's that grid you see up there. If anything were to happen to that, big damage happening.
This is one of my favorite
Во время
POIs on the
патчноут
map.
выйдет.
I really
Я
like
уже
it.
выложил
It's
видос
got
на
a
ютубе
good,
с патчноутом.
sort of like a good way to contest the area. You can, so if we head towards the dish here, you can see that you can actually get on top of this thing, and so it gives you like a nice
Как же он-
360 spot, but you don't have a lot of cover
Не
up
важно.
there. There's a little bit, but we find a lot of teams they'll kind of sit up there and they'll get into some pokey fights with other teams trying to enter the area. So from up here, you have a pretty good view at some of the chokes coming into the area, like the one over there. To the east, you can see that special choke there that leads to Eternal Gardens, which we can go to next. But anytime you sort of see that kind of fencing or
Всю карту
or
показывает,
style,
короче.
you know that it's leading to Eternal
Можно
Gardens.
будет на YouTube
But yeah, you can
вырезать.
kind of just loop around on this thing and look for people.
У людей глаза
You can
вытекут,
also go
правда, но
underneath it. So there's a
ладно.
bowl. There's a little hidden bowl underneath this thing.
Oh, yeah.
That also has a central zip that'll take you back in. So we've had some like really fun endings at this point of interest. It's one of my favorites. You
А
just
чё,
have
нельзя
teams, like,
скачать?
trying to
Потому что
survive
сезон
in
не
here, looking out the
закончился.
windows, trying to like communicate and say which door they're coming in and stuff like that. So it's we can move on. We can head on to Eternal Acres here.
And it's supposed to be like a memorial garden for, the people
Мол,
of
патчноут
Boreas,
не равно
people that are
обновлению.
here on the moon, to kind of remember that day that the moon got hit. So yeah, there's beautiful topiaries, strange creatures, beautiful gardens here. Central Tower actually has the one zip balloon on the map.
Да,
And
здесь всё верно.
inside is quite a lovely kind of
И вот эта
almost like
карта.
a tranquil meditation spot for people that are, when they get off work, they can come here and chill out.
Yeah, so we can go in the bottom. So it's, I call it a fairy pool down here. I don't know if Ed has a better word for it, but I call it the fairy pool. But yeah, it's just a really nice stained glass.
Высокополигональное
Objects
дерево.
coming in and everything. It just looks gorgeous. But there's some really good loot down here. There's also a vertical zip line, 2 vertical zip lines that take you back up to the top. So when you're landing, this is a good place to land, just on this central area here. And then you
Опа.
can take this balloon that takes you up through the stained glass, which is a super cool moment, and that'll just eject you over top of the whole thing. So you can kind of pick like where.
Ладно,
where you
один
wanna
баллон
move to,
найден,
but you
окей.
can't get too far.
Oh, this POI is just like so gorgeous. It's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of the first ones we actually tackled.
Выглядит
They
неплохо
kind of
и
represent that
искусственно.
heavenly side.
Yeah, it's
Как, в
who
принципе,
designed the
и
little
должно быть.
sculptures though, like the little these little animal sculptures that in the
So Aaron, one of our concept artists, did a great job with those. I think we did 4 or 5 of them. Maybe one of them didn't make the cut, but they're really cute. We made it so that you can get underneath them and through them, because some of those spots felt pretty tight, but you should be able to get through.
And then you can enter into the
Как
divide.
же они и рады
This
этой
is
Нессе.
another town POI. It's sort of like two towns facing each other with bridges in the middle.
Ну,
And then
скорость
there is
достаточно
a
высокая,
zip rail
кстати.
connection that loops around. So if you're trying to get a quick flank on the other team or something, you can use the zip rails to come around and attack from the sides instead of face on. And then also, yes, there's the blue energy down here, the updraft energy that'll push you up if you jump into it.
And the vibe we were going for with this POI was that this town was once connected. It was once, it probably had a main street down the middle, And then just to show the kind of fragility of the moon, it got split in half. These bridges have been set up to kind of almost hold the pieces together, but then that explains why we see the blue glow and the updraft happening there. So it's one of my favorite POIs. I think it's going to create some cool kind of side to side.
При попадании будешь не упадать или замедляться? Не-не-не.
Sniping fest. If you're into that kind of thing.
Вообще дерьмо тогда будет. Если падаешь или замедляешься. Ты ж по зипке не падаешь и не замедляешься. Почему по ней должен? Да, разброс такой же должен быть. Ну, та же самая зипка, ребят, должна.
Was that like your intent when you're designing a lot of these POIs, that to potentially have them?
Да,
like,
спрыгивать
double
можно с ним.
usage? Like it's in the BR, but it's also potentially useful in
Только
the
вот
future.
неясно, можно ли спрыгнуть и развернуться назад поехать.
Consistently, but one of the things that we just make sure is like, you know, if we look at this as like, yes, maybe this could work for gun run or something like
Ника,
that.
поиграем, узнаем.
Make sure that it works for the BR first.
Рано судить.
The way this town is laid out, this is just like a really classic kind of level design, you know, technique, which is just like you put a big pit and 2 bridges, and you create these. You just really create these really strong front lines as a result.
Чувствую, как в рейде будут кипеть зипки, ну да.
Down here that's being affected by the updraft gravity and the energy down there, so it's kind of like not behaving exactly like a waterfall.
Вообще нельзя упасть, что ли, за пределы карты?
What do we call that thing? Did it have
Или только вот с этим?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I think it was just supposed to like evaporate, right? Like it's just.
Oh yeah. Okay.
А, ну хотя тут и пропасти нет
So it's
толком.
kind of, the water's kind of getting pushed up by the energy there, so that's just a cool little thing.
And the
so we can-
surrounding biome, you know, we were kind of going for white meadows, so a lot of white kind of lavender flowers. We called it the cloud forest. You'll see these big white mushrooms in the cliffs themselves. Just trying to separate the various POIs so they don't all have, you know, I think we have more than 4 or 5 biomes on this map. Slight variations, but it's just, you know, flowers and color were ways to get.
Будет забавно, если есть на этих зипках такие повороты, где, ну, не видно, что за углом, за поворотом, и просто 2 сквада будут друг друга вдалбливаться и падать с этих зипок.
Yeah, so you'll see we have some of these circular buildings here now. There's a few of these across the map, but they're the most prominent here in bionomics and in another point of interest called cultivation. And they're just really fun. They have a good circuit just around the outside of them, and then there's a good core to them where you can sit and defend. You can also get on the rooftops and use those to defend. They're actually really strong defensible positions, just sort of sitting in the donut, in the middle of the donut.
Вас персов не трогали, в патчноуте ничего про персонажей нет, а здесь мы видим изменения по плану. Хотя это изменения визуальные, там касательно интерфейса связаны. Так что да. В патчноуте легенд вообще ни одну не поменяли.
To protect yourself from above. And then there's a bunch of little secret tunnels and stuff like that in between the bridges and things like that you'll have to find. But lots of paths in and out. And this is one of those points of interest that connect directly back to Terraformer. So you can see on the map there's a choke that'll lead you directly back to Terraformer.
Just from a lens, so like, you know, obviously you're thinking about game usage and obviously making these maps interesting from like a playstyle standpoint, and you're thinking about final circles. How much like of the design is influenced by thought of how it's going to be used in competitive, or how it might be used in, you know, a high level ranked, and, you know, can we keep this because that'll be too strong? Is that kind of stuff you have to deal with? And if so, like, how have you dealt with it on this map? Yeah, that's all part of balancing for sure. You know, sometimes we have a theory on what's going to.
Насколько хороша эта карта для компетитива и игроков высокого уровня, насколько она балансна. Он говорит, мы все продумали, все хорошо.
How it's going to shake out, but once it gets in the live environment within like the first day, community has tested it probably 1,000 times the amount that we will, right. Just because of the sheer volume. We always look for points that are like too strong or that are really powerful. Like I can give you guys an example over here with something that we had to sort of balance out. So we made these rounder buildings.
Каньон Кингс, наверное, вообще заполнен весь.
this kind of lip on them here. So this is like one of the strongest defensible positions that we find that we've created in this area. So you can sort of sit on the lip, you can go over the lip, and yeah, and so one of the things that was making this sort of more powerful was actually the grass on top. So the grass on top was really high and really visible, and so that was one of the
Баги
things where we were
показали,
just like,
через стену видно было.
There's too much grass up here. We need to
Что
pull this
добавлено
back
под
a bit.
вендора. Да, и там
So that,
интерфейс. Видно,
hide
насколько
behind this thing and also
длинную
hide
зипку
in the
ставить можно.
grass. But we find, you know, like if you have a
Индикатор
king
длины
here
зипки.
that's defending it, you know, it's definitely a strong position, but there's many of these, so you can have a bunch of teams.
Юбилей сезона ничего
kind
не
of holed up in
сделали.
each one,
Юбилей
poking at
15-й.
each other and stuff like that. But you know, eventually you're gonna have to come out of your.
Они на годовщину
your
только
position.
что-то грандиозное
That
могут
was an
сделать,
awesome
по сути.
example.
So we have two Atmos stations on this map. This is Atmos Station A, and the other one we call backup in case this one were to go down. While the terraformer is what kind of seeded the area, this is what kind of created the breathable environment. Quite a
Пустая
large
карта.
POI, lots of areas to loot.
Одно
on the-
перекати
on
поле
the
вокруг.
Yeah, so it's a good vertical POI.
Ладно,
This is
я
probably
шучу.
one of our tallest POIs, I'd say, are the Atmos stations.
Но она не
Really
пустая,
easy to
она
land
будто
at when you're landing.
искусственная.
Most people land up here.
Знак.
They go inside afterwards. Really good defensible position up here. You have really good height advantage.
Не, рельеф изменен.
Just really good places to defend if you're into sniping. If you get
Укрытий,
overrun, you
локаций
can kind of go
много.
back to the center here and sort of
Построек.
bunker yourselves in here, but there are
Разнообразные
ways
сами
in
по
and there's
себе.
vertical zips, so you have to kind of be mindful of that as well. The vertical zips, these
QR
will take you down to
здорово.
the bottom. They should also give you a good view of the exterior vertical zips in the front as well, so you can kind of tell if someone's trying to go up. Yeah, and you can just bunker yourselves in here pretty well. Just sort of do a nice loop, staying at the bottom, going back to the top, and vice versa. So it is pretty hard to get a team out of there, but there's lots of options to get out of there. You can go from the back. There's rails that take you pretty close from the back. There's a ramp at the back. There's lots of zip lines taking you up, and then of course all the legends and their abilities.
Ну, вообще, локация, да, действительно. Ну, вот именно вот эта позиция интересная. Она и ультимативная в плане хайграунда, и уязвимая из-за того, что сюда могут добраться все-таки. Райзены всякие, зипки есть. Но на крышу слева можно, в принципе, забрать. Снизу не видно. Причем эта локация, даже если видно будет, далеко.
Up onto the bridge.
This is cultivation.
Yeah, so this is the sister.
Это хорошо, что у локации есть как плюсы, так и минусы. То есть нет каких-то имбалансных точек. Ну, если найдут, то их пофиксят наверняка. Но в планы разрабов это не входило. Ну вот видите, максимально длинную зипку поставил. Ладно, не максимально. В прошлый раз, по-моему, длиннее было. Локации FPS повыше. Вы визуально не сможете определить, больше FPS, не больше. Ну, он человек играет, справа FPS, видите, весь 40. КЗ, правда, что за комп там? Плюс запись идет.
Yeah, cultivation is like our moon farm POI. So you can see inside there's like UV lights and stuff under the ground that's keeping all the plants growing.
Да.
Lots of plants, lots of harvesting, things like that.
Локации.
There's plotted farm plots on the outside and stuff like that.
Это вам не каньон, Кингс.
Controlling it and
Тут
stuff.
как-то горы пожестче отделяют Локи.
Donut buildings and trying to control them. But say the difference to this one is that there's a bit more sort of elevation around the perimeter.
Интересно будет посмотреть, как организовывать ротацию в следующую зону. Ну, может, проходы какие-то на самом деле добавят. Если что-то не так пойдет.
So we can head to the foundry next, and we'll start looking at some of our industrial points of interest.
And so the foundry represents, actually, is one of the POIs that kind of connects Catalyst to the moon the most. So the foundry is where they are processing ferrofluid. This is actually extracted from the geology of the moon itself. It's one of the things they discovered when they came to the moon, that the moon's surface was quite robust.
Играть на оригинальной на постоянной основе.
Find this ferrofluid, create it,
Ну,
You're actually
онлайн
using
бы
it to
сильно
map.
растягивался.
And if you look on the
Если
other
давать
side of the
возможность
moon,
играть старые
the
карты.
skybox, you'll see ferrofluid literally holding pieces of rock together. Like they're trying to pull it and keep it from falling apart. And in the back of the foundry, you'll see that
Акила,
they've
привет.
got this tractor beam on a giant asteroid. And so this is what they do is
Спальный
they
район
kind of
какой-то.
grab a
Игроков
rock,
нет.
drag it into the
Слушай, ну с другой
upper
стороны,
area
если она
of
такая
the
же здоровая
foundry,
будет, как
and then they
штурмпоинт,
crush
карта
it
говно,
and
извините.
get to the minerals on the inside. This is where I think, you know, qadRaT governed the ferrofluid and figured out how to harness it for herself.
You can also defend the foundry
Это что у
from
нас тут?
the upper platform. You can't go all the way to the top, but you can defend from this edge here. So again, another like highly exposed location, but highly defendable. You get a lot of good sight lines for people coming into the foundry. But once you get shot, there's really nowhere to go. You just kind of have to go down and
Слишком много зипов.
And although the surrounding area
Это Pathfinder наставил
is,
просто.
you know, a little more barren, the POI itself is quite colorful with the greens and the blues. So we tried to make sure that the
Ну тут
POI
понимаете,
had a lot of
сама
color
карта,
to it.
видите,
If
какая
the biome itself was a bit more barren. Smaller yellow buildings.
многоуровневая, так сказать.
These are scattered throughout the map as well. It's just like a
Зипки
common
нужны
area for
готовые,
people to,
чтобы
like, get supplies
персонажи с
or
мобильностью
break
не
room
казались
or something like
какими-то
that.
ультимативными.
So the next three are actually
Но Валькирия
all
здесь
kind of
хороша должна
tied
быть.
together. At some point, you know, the work on the moon was maybe
Здорово,
slowing
Хав,
down.
завтра.
People were getting a little disappointed with the progress.
Ощущением даже
So
больше.
the
Да,
government
я вот я
had to
смотрю
figure out
сейчас,
other
как
ways
они
to
бегают,
infuse
показывают
money and
все.
effort. So they
Мне
allowed
кажется,
private
большое.
industry to set up shop on the moon. And we have this group called qadRaGAMING group, and they set up a
Однообразное.
shipbreaking operation. And so Breaker Wharf is where ships are brought to be taken apart.
Ну, вообще, как минимум, стиль такой. Жизнь на планете тут
And then the production yard is kind of where they take some of those pieces and recycle them and repurpose them and send them back out. So this is quite a large POI. It harkens a bit back to like Sorting Factory. It has a bit of that vibe, but it's got its own flavor as well.
It's got this sort of like small, not a full horseshoe, but like half a horseshoe. We'll say semicircle. I don't know what I'm getting at here.
Ну, в каких-то местах повторяешься.
It's got this nice loop through the center of it, like through the interior, and so there's a lot of like CQC fights in here and stuff that can happen. And you can kind of just like go through the space through the interior. You can also get on the roof of this thing.
Как же он флексит.
Pretty powerful position, pretty dominant position. But again,
Пушка
you're a
бафнул
bit of a
да?
sitting duck up here.
Я не знаю, у него шлем вообще.
Can push you and come from a bunch of different ways. There's a few ways up. There's like ramps at the back. There's a zip line. There's a couple of climbs that you'll find to get on top of it. So.
Ребят, почему эти легенд не меняли? Какое оружие?
That's interesting with this point of interest is way
Здесь
at
показывали,
the back.
нет?
There's like a landing zone way at the back.
Сейчас карта.
And the landing zone way back here has some pretty solid loot. What's really interesting about this one is like when you're contesting this one, a lot of the times what I do is if I see a squad going to the back here, I actually go to those buildings right next to it. So yeah, so if a team lands there, right, you can kind of sit up here and you know, and like kind of hold them back there from a more dominant position. So sometimes that's what I'll do is if I see someone landing back there, I won't go for the direct contest and I'll actually land at these buildings. I think that's it. You can see like in the front too, there's a lot of like, there's a land bridge up front there. It gives you some good over under. The zip rails all kind of head that way as well.
And again, even though it's more of our barren look, we added some strong pops of this rusty red that kind of fills in pools and has affected some of the vegetation. So it's just bringing in some more color as well in here.
We'll head on to Dry Gulch. We'll just keep going north towards Dry Gulch. Dry Gulch is another point of interest in this same kind of industrial family. I'd say in terms of just the team and the dev team, this is probably one of the more popular.
Сейчас показывают такие локации, где снайперки прям чувствуют себя хорошо.
Especially in terms of like the members of the team that are really skilled at the game. This point of interest is really interesting, especially this spot right here. It's another kind of cyclical donut, carousel type shaped point of interest. That you can loop around. There's a zip line that cuts through. That's super fun. That's like.
Мне интересно, что они с модулями сделали. Они все фиолетовые модули удалили.
You'll find a lot of people landing here. Some of the good loot is in the center.
Модули только легендарные.
That's like the main building, and then there's sort of like a sub building over here. So this one kind of, you know, you can
Череполом, наковальня и даблтап.
Where one team will get the good building over there, and the other one will get this one. which is still really good, but not as strong as of a position. You can also get on top of these as well. There's a few of these buildings in the game. I think we just call them our warehouse buildings. I can't really remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what people like about this one is how asymmetrical it is compared to some of our other POIs on the map. That's a draw to people that are really skilled. They seem to like this one for that reason. So this POI is the one furthest from, obviously, the terraformer. It's the very edge of the map. So this is probably the most alien, barren-looking section of the map. You'll see a lot of this kind of red mushroom fungus, creepy tendril thing all over the place. We've also got pools of blue, oily liquid around with some kind of, some of the grass has kind of turned purpley blue as well as if it's been leaking into the vegetation. And then the POI itself is this very strong orange to help pop it from the terrain.
This is a ship breaking yard, right, Ed?
Yeah, this is where they bring ships to break down and send it through the chain.
Are there loot ticks on the map? I feel like I hear one.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So
all right. I wasn't going crazy.
Yeah, we brought back the loot ticks from King's Canyon as our loot mechanism for this map.
They're all over the place when you're running around. You'll hear them squeaking and calling to you. Yeah, this map or this POI is very much sort of like I don't know if many of you played the original Halo, but this one
I was gonna say
when our designer built it, I was like, this is very much like that Halo map with the two.
Ну, я помню, было время, когда этот модуль был, но его не переключали, потому что очередью ты эффективнее стрелял с ячейки.
It just reminds me of that in spirit, I guess. But yeah, there's a bridge in the middle you can use to cross. There's a zip rail. So when you have two teams on either side, you can use like the zip rail in the center to cross and make a quick push. So when you're setting up, when you're trying to get a good defensive setup, it's always good.
А что он его заюзать не
Keep
может?
an eye on that bridge. Keep an eye on that zip rail, because when you take the zip rail across, it is really sheltered. So you sort of have to stand like right in front of it to get the most hits. If you're trying to do it from the side, they're gonna get.
Точно, на хаук переключатель.
Yeah, and then there's just lots of ways up, lots of little landing pads and stuff like that.
Было время.
I usually land at the back, way at the back of this POI. I'd say it's probably one of the safer POIs to land at because it is quite edge.
Урона нет? Ну да.
I'd say it's
Почему там урон
the
будет?
furthest
Это ж не лава.
away as well. And so it just brings that good balance that if you are looking for a safe point of interest to land at, this is one of them. And there's a couple of sneaky climbs that you might find running around it. Yeah, it looks like a few people already found them, but you can get on top of this as well. And so again, if there's like no cover up here other than just the edges and trying to hide yourself, you can get sniped from a bunch of different angles around. So it's not the strongest position. And yeah, again, there's no cover up here. So once you get shot, you pretty much have to jump off. I think that wraps up the tour. I think the only one we didn't go to was the backup Atmo, but you'll see if you look at both of those points of interest.
На YouTube почну смотреть. Там есть инфа.
They are pretty similar to each other. Similar building, similar kind of layout as well.
Now we're moving on to Daz's questions. First question is, how did the idea of the zip rails come about?
This was an idea we were kicking around for a long time. Originally, it was an idea that was thought about for Olympus, I think, but we cut that pretty quickly because we didn't really like where it was heading. So we dug it up again because it was an idea that we were excited about, and we really thought about like, okay, well, what if we add these? Like, what is the point? You know, like we already have zip lines, we already have balloons and all these other traversal things. So what are we actually trying to accomplish here? And the thing we kind of landed on was we wanted more connectivity between the edge POIs because we find
Ребята, если также крюк юзаете, лайк ставьте, пожалуйста.
edge of the map is a lot slower, it takes a lot longer.
Если себя увидели.
Pulls you away from the edge. So that was something
Давай,
that
от коробки наверх.
really interesting and a really good ad that we could include with the map.
Ну давай, покажу.
You'll see a lot of the zip rails are actually connected to the outer POIs and allow you to do much longer loops, but yeah, that's kind of where that is planted.
Вот что-то врезался.
Right, next question is, what are the major design goals for Broken Moon?
Yeah, so continuing with that same thread of zip rails, one of the goals that we were also thinking of was like, okay, well, how can we shake up kind of the traditional flow of a match? We find that
Баллон один был.
once you land an edge POI, your squad's trajectory is usually pretty similar, depending, of course, on which way the ring goes, but you're usually leaving those POIs in a similar way or from a similar trajectory. So we really wanted to think about, like, well, what was a way that we could actually change your trajectory or change the way you're moving towards the ring quickly? And so that's where zip rails kind of came in as well. And we wanted to give people opportunities to not consistently have to rely on Valk in terms of like quick rotations and getting your squad out of harm's way. So zip rails was like another opportunity for that. So you know, you might not always have to have Valk in your composition as a result.
Cool. And then next up is, how does this map reflect the team's philosophy on hot drops and third partying?
Yeah, so our philosophy on hot drops is that they are healthy, but they get unhealthy when there's too many people dogpiling, because what that ends up doing is once every
Это такая дресь...
and you get this weird.
Ну, вопрос из разряда... Ладно. Любая карта... В любой карте будут хот-дропы, до хрена людей падать, и в любой карте будут подсасывать. Абсолютно. Каньон Кингс вайнили то, что там подсосы постоянно. Каньон Кингс сменился на на место боя. Там также подсасывают. Да на любой карте вас подсасывать будут. Тут не только от карты зависит, от того, как залендились противники. Ну, это одно из самых важных.
More contestable spots right out of the gate, but it makes it sort of that the POI. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. With the larger POIs, you basically have time to get like your footing. So when you land, there are these hot spots where you can land to get the best loot, but there's also areas where you can land to get your footing, be more proactive about.
Синий бин для саппорт-героев, я что-то пропустил? Не только лайфа будут открывать?
And we found that with that, like, not as many people dogpile all on the same POI because there is more space to share across the map. So we thought that was a pretty effective change. And then as far as third party,
не знаю, как упадут скорее.
It's a core element of the game. We're not trying to remove third partying. We think it's a very viable strategy. And what we are trying to do though is think about ways to kind of soften it up. You know, if like people are choosing to third party, is there a way that you can actually defend against that? So balloons, you know, a balloon gives you free range, 360-degree control over how you want to drop on someone, where with like a zip line or a zip rail, we find that the points are a little bit more fixed, so you kind of have an idea of where people are coming from. So it's a similar philosophy behind the launchers or the cannons in that launch you on.
Молодцы, заметили.
Awesome. And finally, how would you say that rotation feels on this map?
I would say rotation feels good. There's a lot of opportunity for large macro rotations with the zip rails, and then a lot of the points of interest we've built with that cat and mouse gameplay in mind, where you know, if you get a shield break, there's still opportunity to get away or run away or hide or disengage for just enough time to heal. So that's really important to us in our designs.
Все, только карта была QA, на которых не особо что-то интересное по итогу. Ну хотя, что тут спросить? Короче, для передвижения по этой байде баллон один, по крайней мере, из всех, что показали, и все. Для ротации. Пропасти нет. Собственно, вот некоторые люди